Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is Louisa May Alcott's green tea blend from Simpson and Vale, which is really good. It has apple and strawberry bits, which I know sounds a little bit summery, but sometimes you're in the mood for something. You're in the mood for something, and I've been a little lax in drinking green tea lately, and sometimes I'm going to drink it in whatever way I can, because I don't know. When it gets a little colder, I sort of want I don't know, the embrace of the black tea with milk kind of coziness. But green tea is really good for a lot of health reasons, and I do enjoy it. So I don't know. I thought that would sort of tie into one of my reading goals for next year, which I have many. I did one recently about certain classics I want to read from the 19th century. I hope to do more classics, but I thought I would now talk about some nonfiction books I would like to read in 2022. 2022. And I do love reading nonfiction, but sometimes it takes me a little longer, so I don't seem to read as much. But it doesn't bother me because, you know, it's a goal. And I did read a good amount in 2021, but we're not talking about looking back right now. I'm looking forward right now. So, one of the things I thought I would do is show you some books that I have in my reading goals, but some of these books aren't the exact book I will read. Some of them are just representative of the books I might want to read. So I may have other books on a similar subject that I will end up choosing. Or I may end up going to the library and picking a book on that subject, and this one will look at me like, well, hello, I've been here. But I will try to read as many of these as possible as well. So, pillows are falling. I'm a little distracted because the heater, the radiator is a little loud right now, and but we'll just have to deal with distractions, won't we? And at least we're getting heating. That's a good thing, right? So, first of all, this is a book I purchased not too long ago in a nice independent bookshop, and I'm supporting it. I had a little coupon, but it was still, pretty much for full price. And then, of course, I saw that book off for a lot cheaper and said, I should just really read this because it is a subject I like. And that is Laura Mayclem, Mud Lark, In Search of London's Past Along the River Thames. Anything about London is interesting to me. And probably I would be including in this list a lot more books about writers from London or, bookish London. Because if I don't think it's going to happen. I just have no positivity about anything anymore. But if I get to go to London next year, of course that's something I'll be looking at. But I'm not focusing on books about books right now because I'll be talking a lot about that in January. So, All right. Something I have read throughout the year, but I always feel like I never do enough of, even though I do enjoy the subject, is anything related to nature writing, animals, plants, whatever. And here are just 3 examples of books that I was very enthusiastic about and somehow haven't gotten to yet. So this is The Seabird's Cry by Adam Nicholson. I bought it and it was this really great shape, and now I dropped it and there's a little bit of unevenness. And but it's still in pretty good shape, but I just want to read it already. It's about the lives and loves of puffins, gannets, and other ocean voyagers. It just kind of sounds good. And I've heard nothing but good things about this book, so yeah. And then there's The Good Pig, The Extraordinary Life of Christopher Hogwood by Cy Montgomery. I know a little bit about this pig because Cy Montgomery wrote about it in one of her other books. I forgot the name of the book, something Creatures. And, yep, out of my head. But it was good, but I also know that the pig supposedly probably, I think, dies at the ending. And since I did lose a really loved pet this year, I just didn't think I was in the mood for it, but maybe 2022. And also H is for Hawk, which is a memoir. What about hawking, I guess. And no, I know what it's about, but I took it out of the library once, and then I found it at Book Off. And what held me back over the years was the fact that it starts off, because when I took it out of the library, I read that her father dies, and it took me many years before I was able to read books at all related to that subject, but I think I can now, because I did read a book not too long ago that was a memoir in which someone's father had just died, so I think I could probably deal with it now. I mean, a decade and a half, I think, is enough time. All right, so, let's not get all sad and, maudlin right now, right? Another type of reading I like to do is food and drink reading. Obviously, I have a massive, for me anyway, massive tea library. I've read most of them, so that would be rereading, which I'm not really talking about right now. There is one or two books that I still haven't read in that shelving system, but anyway, so that's just one thing. But I do like reading about food memoirs, travel/food memoirs, cooking, etc. I have to be careful because I do have a bit of a digestive issue that sometimes if it's the only book I have to read when I'm outside, when I'm inside, that's not a problem when I'm at home, but if it's the only subject I have to read about and maybe I'm not feeling great while I'm outside, this is not a good idea. So usually I have to keep, but not so much for drink memoirs. That's usually okay. So this first one is a drink memoir. It's Champagne Baby, How One Parisian Learned to Love Wine and Life the American Way by Laura Dugas. So I guess she moves to America. She has quite a knowledge of wine and I guess champagne, and has to sort of learn about living in the United States. And I think it talks a lot about wine, and I can never stop learning enough about that. I'm not a heavy drinker, to be honest, but I do enjoy a nice glass of wine and certain other liquors too. I don't really like beer, but so it never hurts to learn a little more from an expert, and I just like memoirs in general. And here is also a food memoir of a kind of food I know a little bit about, but not that much. I bought this pretty early, I think, in the pandemic. One of the things I would have thought is it reminded me of when my sister was visiting, the last time she visited New York, and we went out together to eat, and we had a good time. So it was one of the types of places we went out to while she was visiting. So it might have given me a good feeling, and also just because this is a place that I'd like to travel to, but probably never will, because I mentioned this in a recent video that I don't know if I could travel more than a certain amount of hours on a plane. I just don't know. So if I can't, at least I can read about it, and this is just one of the many types of foods I like to read about. And this is Eating Korea, Reports on the Culinary Renaissance by Graham Holiday. He, I believe, is sort of like a food writer, but he tries all kinds of different foods and travels, so I like that. And he'll do it for me. And sometimes that's good because I am not the most adventurous eater. There's levels. There's like picky eaters, and then there's I'll try anything. I don't know if it should be up or down. I'll try anything. I'm probably like here. I will try some things, but I like to read about it. So, and sometimes it's easier to read about than to watch. I don't always like watching people eat. So this could be good, and it might, well, I have all kinds of food cravings. I live in a part of Queens, New York that has types of dishes from all over the world. Some of them are adapted to, an American palate, obviously, but still, you always, if you pass by a restaurant, you have to look who the patrons are. If they are all, if they all aren't really, if they don't appear to be, it really looks are deceiving, but if they don't appear to be from that region that the restaurant is from, okay, it might still be really good. But if you see people from that area, I mean, if you go to a Colombian restaurant and there's Colombian people there, if you go to a French restaurant and there's French people dining there, if you go to a Korean restaurant you see Korean people dining there, so that it's probably at least somewhat authentic. So I do have in my neighborhood restaurants probably from all of the above, and I do have some Korean restaurants. I am pretty picky about certain foods, and I don't like very hot spicy food, so it does narrow my palate, my choices very much so. But there are a few places I wouldn't mind trying. Some places I have tried already, so maybe this will guide me a little bit, or maybe it'll just make me spout off a lot of knowledge to someone in a restaurant and they will want to shut me up. So we shall see. And I don't count Paris Baguette, even though it's kind of fun. They opened up another branch of Paris Baguette near me, which sounds like French food, and it is in a in a sense, the pastries, there's croissants and everything, but apparently it's a Korean chain, so it's a variation, which I like. I kind of like that sort. I guess I don't know if you can call it fusion or if it's just someone's take on something. I do kind of like that, and I can't believe people still have car alarms. Like, really? But anyway, but it doesn't really count, I don't think, for that. So we'll see what this book has to say. And just traveling in general. I haven't traveled enough in recent years. So, okay. Here is a subject that I keep wanting to read more about, and I have a little bit in 2021, but I feel like not enough, especially considering the fact that I made a whole project about it. I've read about things that involve the Pre-Raphaelites, but not are specifically about them. And I have a number of things. Excuse me. Anyway. Yeah, the problem about living in New York is that you're going to always be near traffic no matter what you do. Okay, and that's the Pre-Raphaelites. And you can probably see the book in back of me. There's another book about Pre-Raphaelites I wouldn't mind reading as well. But then there's, of course, this, very exciting picture, Pre-Raphaelites in Love by Gay Deli. And I've heard nothing but good books. Nothing but good things about this book. And I want to dive into it. So that's yet another subject. Art history, I love. Pre-Raphaelites are one of my favorite things to read about, but I wouldn't mind reading about any other kind of art history. I am terrible at art, but I appreciate the history about it and the study of it. So that is one example. All right. Now, speaking of history, I have 4 books here that are either books I want to read or are close to the subject of what I want to read more of. And this first one I've shown you a number of times and somehow I haven't started it yet. And this is The Romanovs. 1613, 1918 by Simon Sebag Montefiore. I don't know, Montefiore. Anyway, it's a really beautiful cover. I love this color. It looks makes me think of spring a little bit. And this is a comprehensive book about the Romanovs. And I would like to read more Russian history because, well, I'd like to read more Russian history. I have read a number of books, but not as much as I could. And being that in 2021 I started reading, finally, Russian literature, I would like to kind of, pair it up a little bit with history, so you have a little bit of background, even though sometimes what you're reading about doesn't really correspond with it. So what? Have a little fun. So that's one book. I have a number of other books about the Romanovs, etc. I have a book about Peter the Great, which is a different time, but still. So I have a number of books about Russian history. This is just one of the ones I would really like to read. And I never get tired of English history, but this is a time I've only read a little bit about, and mostly historical fiction. So this might be a good one. Antonia Fraser, Faith and Treason, the story of the gunpowder plot. Heard a little bit about it recently because November, Guy Fawkes night. And I watched a couple of videos about the background of it. And so I know a little bit about what went into that whole plot. But I don't know as much about that as I do about a lot of other parts of English history. I know a lot and could read more about Elizabethan history, about Tudor history altogether. This is like right past Tudor history and into the Stuart part of English history, which is really another part that in like about approximately 100 years, it was a completely different world almost in England, but just different upheavals, different things that I don't think anyone would have expected when James I or James VI, however you want to refer to him as, came to the throne. So yeah, it is a subject that I'm quite into, and I like Antonia Fraser as a historian. She's one of my early writers when it came to reading English history. Now moving to American history, this is a chunker, and I can't imagine if I'm going to get through this entire book in 2022, but I did find a copy of it. Oh, Book Off, I paid a bit much for it than I normally, compared to what I normally pay at Book Off. So I really should read it, because that, and I think, well, I'm not going to look at it now, the Romanovs also was another one I didn't pay just $1 for at Book Off, which I know is a silly thing to think about, but it's more of a motivator, right? But this is a subject that I've wanted to read about. I don't there are a few times in American history that I'm a little less knowledgeable about. I really am not extremely knowledgeable about American history, but I've started to know more about the time of, the American Revolution. And then, of course, I guess you would say post-Civil War America, I know a little bit about, and the Gilded Age, whatever you want to call it. I know a bit of New York history, but I don't know much about, here we go, Grant. So this is Ron Chernow's book. I've read one book by him so far, and that is obviously the biography of Alexander Hamilton. Found it really good. I heard this is a good one too. And again, I don't know much about Grant. I know where he's buried. I pass by it sometimes. I haven't in a while, but when I'm uptown, actually I want to get back up there again. It's been a while. So I wouldn't mind reading about him. This looks like a really interesting book. And everything I've heard about Ulysses S. Grant is pretty cool. And I think this covers a little bit of the, yeah, of course it does. It covers the Civil War time period as well, right? I'm like, am I wrong? Uh-oh. Because I am not as knowledgeable about American history, sometimes my years get a little bit confused. I don't always know what year which president was in office. Then again, I don't know exactly every year the English kings and queens were in office either, but I tend to know it a little bit better. So that's a little weird, right? So, but there are some presidents I don't feel so bad about that with, but Grant, I don't know. I feel like I should know a little more about him for some reason. Last but not least, another big book, actually a trilogy of books that I've mentioned, of course, on this channel. This is another subject I would like to learn more about, not just because of time period, but this person himself. There's a lot I don't like about him, but he was quite a person in history, right? And that is, oh, here we go. My poor wrists are like, what are you doing to me? I can read this book though. Like I won't be able to maybe hold it up and read like some of these books because my wrists are just pathetically weak lately, but I could probably read it sitting down like on a lap or something or on a table. And this is The Last Lion, Winston Spencer Churchill. Spencer, yes, those Spencers. 1874 to 1932, Visions of Glory by William Manchester. I have the last two books of this trilogy propping up a lamp in my living room because it needed to be propped up, and I'm like, well, these will do it. So I really just want to get started on this because these are not meant to be just propping up things. This one was $1 at Book Off, but the other books I think I spent a little more on. So yeah, this was a Christmas gift to somebody many years ago, 1990, 31 years ago. So now it's my time to read it, as opposed to, who was it for? Let's see the name. Okay. Elizabeth. Yep. Now it's Catherine. So those are just some examples, and hopefully next year at this time, I don't know if I'll be looking back and comparing my goals to what I've actually read, because I try not to do that because then I just get so ashamed of myself. But if I was doing that, whether I was doing it in a video or just sitting by myself and looking at things, I would like to say, hey, I read some of these, right? So we'll see. Let me know if you guys have read any of these, which ones you think I should start with, which ones you think maybe are kind of avoidable, maybe. I hope not, because I hate to think that I picked up books that are avoidable. But either way, I mean, I don't mind a warning if something is absolutely terrible, right? So I hope you guys are looking forward to the next year of reading. And again, like I said, not that you want to speak too soon, but at least that is something most of us can look forward to. If it's not travel, it's not other things, at least reading, right? On that note, this is Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and book-filled day and year.